Guys, welcome to Pro Shop Talk. I'm Daniel. I'm the technical director here at the Masters Craft, and this is our series where we get to talk to some of our vendor partners about their products and some of the tips and tricks and techniques to apply them and use them. So today we get to talk with Will Brown from Basic Coatings, and we get to talk about Basic Coatings' new water-based stain Hypertone. So I'm excited about this. Will, welcome to Pro Shop Talk.
Glad to be
Why
here.
don't you give us a little quick introduction about Basic Coatings and also what you do?
So I'm Will Brown, regional sales manager for Basic Coatings. I cover Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So it pretty much overlaps with most of the Masters Craft territory. I've been involved in flooring pretty much my entire life, or my entire adult life. I started out actually as a distributor rep in 1986,
Wow.
and had many different positions in flooring. But this opportunity with Basic came along, and one of the only things I hadn't done was sand and finish and recoated floors. So I've been with the company 5 years now. So
Might as well become an expert in that as well. So
there you go.
awesome. So your territory, you're from Canada all the way down to Mexico. You got quite the swath.
Right. We really don't have much active distribution in North Dakota and South Dakota, so that's kind of like you guys do what business we do here.
Cool. So for people who don't know a lot about Basic Coatings, why don't you give us the 30,000 foot view of what you guys do?
So Basic Coatings was actually the original water-based floor finish. I believe we go back to like 1984. There's a little question about the date, but I actually did a little job up in Des Moines this week and put down some sealer with a guy that was with Basic Coatings when we were in Des Moines, Iowa. That's where his headquarters was. And he claims to be the first person that ever put down water-based finish on a gym floor. So that was interesting.
There you go.
Since they started out in Iowa, our parent company is now Betco. So that gives us a lot of resources and stuff.
Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about the new stain line that you guys have that is a little bit different from a classic stain that somebody would use in the hardwood flooring world, but also comes with a lot of advantages that typical stains don't have. So why don't you tell us about Hypertone and give us an idea of what that product is and why you guys carry it and what problems it solves for guys.
So Hypertone is it's a water oil hybrid stain. The advantage is, it takes out the smell. It becomes a low VOC product. Takes out the combustibility, so that you no longer have to worry about rag fires or any of those type of problems. Customers don't worry about the smell. It's no worse than having your house painted, basically.
Yeah.
Some of the advantages that have come along is the product works extremely well on hard to stain species. The colors that you can achieve are second to none. There's a small color line. There's like 16 colors, but you can produce basically any color that you could possibly want.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's a water oil hybrid. It's got low VOCs, and it stains evenly on hard to stain species. So we'll try and kind of hit all of those points a little bit. So water oil hybrid. I know a lot of guys are going to hear water-based stain and then probably immediately start having some nightmares or some PTSD from previous jobs. But your guys' stain is easier to apply than what guys would typically think of as a water-based stain. So let's talk a little bit about the application process and kind of go through that. So first of all, sanding. Is there anything specifically different that a guy would do sanding a floor than a typical oil stain?
No, you'd repair it the same way. basically our statement is prepared to NWFA or Maplewood Flooring Association, either one of those standards. So
Okay.
it's no different as far as the preparation of the floor.
So you're sanding the same, let's say, as like a typical medium to dark stain color in an oil-based stain. So and around what, 100 grit, 120 grit, somewhere in there?
And around 100, 120, whatever you typically would do.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's easy. That's easy to remember. So we've got the floor sanded. Do you guys recommend water popping?
Yes, especially with the darker colors, but any floor can be water pop.
Mm-hmm.
The neat thing about the water pop, as soon as there's no puddles on the floor, of course you would spray it with a low pressure, pump up sprayer, and even it out with a microfiber or a T-bar, whatever you happen to have, to make sure it's not evenly. But you don't have to wait until the floor is, 100% dry. If you have a spot that's not quite dry, as long as you don't have puddles and stuff, it's not going to affect the quality of the stain job.
So you don't want to see a spot that's just obviously still saturated with water, but you're also not having to go over it with a moisture meter to make sure you're right back to 100% bone dry. Okay. So you recommend water pop on that, and then once you water pop, vacuum tacked, how is somebody going to apply this stain?
So this is where it's a little different. You can't rag the product on. The stain has to be applied evenly. So we recommend rolling it on with a 3/8 inch nap roller, microfiber roller, and applying it in like a 2 or 3 foot strip. What you can easily work on. Person probably wants to start out, with a little easier to reach and a little easier to see as they're working, as far as the width of the strip. And you roll it on, and you saturate the floor completely. It looks like you're putting a ton on there. And as soon as you get it applied, you turn around and start removing it.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're going to pick a strip on a floor, and then with the grain.
With the grain, correct.
2 to 3 feet, and then you're rolling it on 3/8 microfiber roller, which is sounds like a pretty standard finish roller. So basically the kind of finish roller that you'd use to apply water-based finish. And then do you pour the stain directly on the floor? Do you dunk out of a bucket? Do you use a paint tray? What's the best way to do that?
So out of those, the one thing you can't do is pour the stain directly on the floor.
So don't pour it on the floor.
Don't pour it on the floor.
You're probably going to use like a paint tray or something like that, and you're going to load your roller, and then you're going to apply it into that strip. So 2 by 5 foot area, 3 by 5 foot area, and you get it evenly across that strip as you're going down, right?
Right.
Okay. So then you've rolled that on, and then is somebody coming back behind that with rags, and what's the best way to wipe that off? Do you have to wait for it to sit into the floor for any amount of time, or?
So there's absolutely no advantage to letting the product sit. You want to remove the product as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Again, here another little tip is we find that terry cloth rags work the best. You're putting on quite a bit of material, and you're also taking off quite a bit. So we recommend working with 2 rags. We've got a really good video online for anybody that wants to see it, or they can contact me through one of the location managers at Masters Craft. But you're using 1 rag to get the excess off, and then another rag to blend it in. So it's possible for 1 guy to do it in a smaller area. I would recommend 2 if you've got like a long run of a room, because by the time you get it all rolled on, there's going to be.
Gotcha. So as you're working those strips down, you got a guy rolling, guy following with 1 rag to get the majority of the product off, 1 rag to even it out. You're just going to go down, turn around, come right back and do another strip in the room, and go down and back like that in the room, basically. Okay. Sounds like a pretty good system. Yeah, one of the things that I'm really impressed by with your product is that you have pretty good instructional videos. So I would encourage anybody to either go online to Basic Coatings website take a look at the videos under Hypertone Stain. I think you also have those posted on YouTube and a couple other places as well. So, and it shows that process, the roll-on rag-off process. So, if you're putting the product down and you're moving you're moving at a pretty good clip, what's the approximate working time you'd have with the product? Is it seconds? Is it minutes?
No, I would say that you have 5 or 10 minutes. Again, a good example would be somebody doing a 12 by 12 room. A single guy would have time to go down, get it all coated, in a 3-foot strip, and wipe that strip off in an appropriate amount of time. So,
okay, gotcha.
What if you wanted 5 to 10 minutes easy? So.
Great. What if you wanted to increase the open time of the product?
So, and we do recommend that if you have climate conditions, a lot of air movement that you can't control, sun coming in through a window, just extreme heat or dry, we have a product called Stain Glide. Stain Glide can be added to the product. It increases the open time and the workability. And that's another, for anybody that's doing their first job, I would recommend using Stain Glide at close to the maximum level so that you can learn to work the product a little better.
Okay, gotcha. How much Stain Glide can you add per gallon of finish?
Up to 16 ounces per gallon.
Up to 16 ounces. And then I would assume if you're doing a multi-gallon job, you want to add the same amount to every gallon.
Keep it consistent, correct.
Okay, either that or batch it all in a bucket together, something like that. Okay, great. So that's working time going down and back. How long is it going to take that product to dry before you can get on it and coat it?
So the recommendations are 2 to 4 hours. Of course, overnight's better if you've got that luxury. You can use a moisture meter at the beginning of the process to make sure that you're back to the level that the floor was to start with.
Okay.
But 2 to 4 hours,
So, okay. So about like a normal stain, and if you can, let it sit overnight. And then I think you'd mentioned this, but any of the colors, they can be intermixed at all to create different color effects?
So there's only 16 colors in our line, which some people would think that's a weakness, but with those 16 colors, you can come up with any color in the rainbow. And we have the red, blue, and yellow to get you there too. So, you can literally make green if you want. We had a red Floor of the Month in our Floor of the Month contest.
Nice. So any of those can be mixed together. I think one of the things I saw on your website that is really helpful too is you've actually done a color recipe guide for classic industry colors like antique brown or things like that you can get a recipe straight from your website to mix up Hypertone to mimic typical industry colors, right?
Right, and those are guidelines. They'll get you close, but again, you can tweak. So, one of the things that people have come to use on this is like little measuring cups and stuff to make it. But we know that there's lots of tailgate chemists in the floor industry anyway. So.
Yeah, cocktail makers. So awesome. So within that color mix, I noticed you've got neutral and clear base. Tell us about those two.
So neutral is like a neutral in a regular oil stain, and will produce a similar color effect.
So it'll darken the wood a little bit.
It'll darken the wood a little bit. Neutral does have color, even though it's called neutral. Clear base is a clear product. And so where that really comes into play and is an advantage if you're trying to do a white floor or a gray floor and you don't want to introduce any yellow at all to it and want that non-yellowing effect and want it to last. Here you're dealing with a almost no oil product with a clear base color, so you can get deeper, richer, or clearer colors, I guess is a simple way to put it.
Okay, interesting. So if you're using clear base and you add Stain Glide to it, does that cause any darkening effect at all?
The stain glide really has no effect. It does not dilute the color at all.
Okay, it doesn't dilute the color, and it doesn't, like, if you're trying to use that clear base, it doesn't tint a white or a gray to amber it.
No.
Okay, nice, great. So can mix it, can create just about any sort of color effect. How about, let's say, repairability? Let's say you get done staining a floor, and you come in and you take a look, and there's a spot or two that you want to repair, either like a heavy spot, or you dropped a little bit of stain, or there's a little bit of an overlap, you didn't quite come back fast enough. How would somebody repair Hypertone before they start coating it?
So in that time range, in that 2 to 4 hours you're waiting to apply finish where it's really drying out,
Uh-huh.
you could probably do a repair with something as simple as a damp rag,
Okay.
and or a rag with a little stain on it, and work the spot out. Pretty simple.
So a damp rag would kind of pick up a little bit of the stain, and then you could restain it.
And blend it in, correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
After that, if you have a spot or something, and it's fully dried and that doesn't work, you could use a marine pad, mildly abrade, lighten it up, and then blend it back in with some stain.
Gotcha. Okay.
Get to where you need to be.
So
Some of the things like water spots and stuff like that you have with a conventional stain, they just don't show up. I mean, if you also a sweat spot or a drip of water or anything like that, it's no big deal.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're not going to have the water spotting you typically get, but if you get a little bit of a thick spot, dark spot or overlap, you can just kind of pat it out with the maroon pad and then apply some more stain to blend it in. Gotcha. Let's say you get done with the coating process, or you're called back for a repair later on. I assume, is it the same kind of repair process, like a board isolation, sanding, and finishing, that kind of a thing?
It'd be the same process, right? When it's got finish on it, but you should be able to do a board isolation repair.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there a type of finish that you recommend putting over it in terms of water-based, oil-based, or penetrating oil? What do you guys typically recommend?
So there's you can almost say that there's almost nothing that won't go over it.
Uh-huh.
But there's a few products, we found that some products that have acrylic in them to help them level and that type of thing are not compatible. So,
okay. So a high acrylic type water-based product is probably not a preferable product to use.
Even some that aren't so high in acrylic,
So a low, mid to medium acrylic water-based finish. Okay. And I assume with any of that, I mean, guys have finishes they've used for years, and with any of these products, especially stain and finish, I always recommend guys, use a panel in their shop or get on a panel and do some testing first.
Right. That's, we know the product works with ours and back up our products, but if it's not our finish, they're pretty much on their own on that.
Sure. Would that apply also with like a penetrating oil? Like, could you use a penetrating oil over the top of it?
I'm not 100% sure. I know it's been done. So we have people that are doing more complex processes with it, and
sure.
Are having successes, but they are using the finish the stain as a base coat, and
then coming over the top of that. So again, that's something probably when you get into that strata of custom floor, a guy's going to be testing it anyway, but you'd certainly recommend testing, or I would recommend to a contractor, test it on a panel and see how it works with a penetrating oil or an oil-based stain or another water-based stain outside of the basic lineup.
Exactly. So, but it is compatible with all our products. And the guys that are doing that kind of thing too, they know how to figure it out and make it work. That's the
yeah. And the guys who are asking for help on that probably should just stick within the basic lineup to make sure they're getting 100% success rate on it. So, okay, so we've got that, got application. I guess, what's the question I'm trying to ask? If somebody was going to screw this up in some way, and contractors will always find the most creative ways to screw something up, what are the easiest pitfalls they can avoid with this stain on?
Again, the first thing I'll say is I would hope that somebody would watch the video first,
Yep.
or bare minimum read the instructions in the back. It's clear you cannot rag the product on. You can't pour the product on the floor. It has to be applied evenly with a roller. That would be the quickest way you could do it. Again, you have to be fairly well disciplined. If you roll some finish, you start, you gotta finish, or at least get to a break in a door where you can tape off a board or something like that. You can't stop and go smoke a cigarette and come back, 15 minutes later after you've taken a couple phone calls and stuff and expect to start back up and not have any problems. That's, pretty standard.
Gotcha. And then I would assume you can't buff it on either.
The product can be buffed on. We recommend that everybody does the job hand applied first to really get a feel of the product and how the product behaves and what you can and can't do. If you do buff it on, where you can really mess it up is with one of the thin white pads for applying stain or carpet. They just create too much friction, too much heat, and they kind of burn it into the floor, and you go to the spot and you're going to buff across it and fix it, and you're just going to make it permanent.
Gotcha.
It can be buffed. If you do buff it, it's buffed with a white scrubber pad like you would use for a backup pad on a buffer type of thing. So,
gotcha. That's in the advanced section, though.
It's I've seen people that if they understand and follow their directions when it's buffed on, they have no problems.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, I think this is a really good product for contractors to have in their back pocket. It answers a decent amount of questions I always get if people want a low VOC lineup, especially. I don't know of anything else out there that is a low VOC stain that is also easy to apply. So I know a lot of guys will hear water-based stain and think, ooh, I'm going to stay away from that. But this is actually a product you guys have made that's low VOC, and it is able to be put on by one person, which is saying a lot for a product like that, I think. So, and then the other thing too, I think to highlight is what you said at the beginning about hard to stain wood species. Tell us a little bit about kind of how it goes on to a hard to stain wood species.
So we're really got kind of tipped off on this. I mean, it was out there, but we do quite a bit of sport floor business. So immediately on maple floors, maple is a hard to stain species.
Yeah.
So it applies and it's not blotchy. That transfers over to if you have a Brazilian cherry floor. Most people, I don't want red anymore. What do I do? And they say, the contractor's like, rip it out. We'll put something different in. You can sand the floor, and you can make that Brazilian cherry brown, or you can do a gray. But with one of the heavier pigmented colors, you can block the red.
Interesting.
The product also works really well on pine. Again, no blotchiness. So you can just about go through every hard to stain species, and it will handle the issue. We've done a couple like demo patterns. I did. It was actually one of the Masterscraft locations, and so I get this panel, and it's maple. Bow, I think, was one of the products, and Brazilian cherry, like strips down the floor. When we did the panel, it almost all looked like the same species when it was done.
Wow.
And I've had a few like red and white oak floors mixed, and they don't want that variation in it.
Yeah.
You know, it masks a lot of that.
Interesting. So it not only evens out species that tend to stain blotchy, but it also tends to just go down more evenly across species as well.
Right. And you know, the other thing that a contractor can accomplish is if they've got a species and the homeowner doesn't want as much grain to show, you know, again, the product you can apply one of the heavier pigmented ones where it will actually block a lot of that and make it look more consistent. The other little trick that some people are doing now is if you get to the end product and you're trying to do a black floor and make it black or a white floor, you know, and this is probably leading into your next question, but you can actually mix the Hypertone stain with our finishes and use it as a color to do color correction.
So you can tint coat with it as well.
Correct.
So obviously, the caveat there is tint coat is hard to do, so know how to tint coat.
Again, that's the guys that know how to do it have already figured it out, but it can be done. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. So you can actually add this into your finishes and get a little bit of pigment to it. So,
you know, I've had people do it to make a floor look more amber. In a white floor whiter, a black floor blacker.
Right.
I've had, you know, where, you know, a job where it wasn't possible to, you know, I mean, to match an existing floor where you're at a doorway or something and get it awfully darn close.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Awesome. Any other thing you want to highlight about it?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we started out, we just had the gallons, and you know, gallons is a good thing. Some places you can only buy quarts, but we just introduced pints too for the guy that wants to, you know, try it. A pint will do close to 200 square feet, you know, rather than invest in a whole gallon to start with, or somebody that wants to try using it as a tint in a finish. The pints are available now.
Okay, great. Actually, that is one really good thing to highlight in a place like, I mean, I'm in Colorado, California would be another place, in a place that has a VOC limit on container size. You guys can actually sell gallons of stain as opposed to other oil-based stains that can only be sold in quarts. So that's another big advantage. And then just for guys' information, how far is a gallon going to take them square footage-wise?
600 to 800 square feet.
Somewhere at 68. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's again depending on how it was sanded, the species, the gaps in the floor, you know, all the other factors that affect stain coverage with any product.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on and appreciate you guys or giving us information on Hypertone. I know it's a unique product and it's a really good product. So I hope contractors out there will find this video informative. So for all you guys watching, appreciate your time. Let us know if you have any questions, post in the comments, and we'll get back to you here as quickly as we can. So
Very good.
appreciate it, Will.
Thanks.